Lob to the rim. Jeremy Evans touches the heavens and slams it home. Timeout, Chicago. Hayward with a career-high 12th assist. Freck and Frack for two. Welcome to today's edition of Tip-Off. Good Monday morning to you. Thanks for tuning in whenever you may be. We'll talk about the horrendous injury to Paul George, Gordon Hayward's play at USA Basketball, plus we'll look around at some other things, how we score. Oh, come on, it's early. Not like that. Hope you're good. I'm David Locke, radio voice. Oh, wait. Hi, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz. You can catch it on iTunes, Stitcher, weareutahjazz.com, however it is that works best for you. Thanks very much for tuning in. I appreciate it. You taking the time. Had two daily DVoires to lead off the show, if I may. For those that are new to the show, the Daily DVoire is named after a friend of mine named DeVar, who is just the most positive, optimistic guy on the planet, and kind of at one of the low moments of time when the Utah Jazz fan base and probably myself was having a tough time. He caught me at a moment where he told me how much he loved everything and how great the guys were. And I was like, you know, he's having more fun. So we try to bring that out. My two DVoires, first off, the DVoire is a Friday. I was at the Energy Solutions Arena, and the turnout was incredible for the open seat event. We did sell a lot of new season ticket holders. So welcome to the, I think, over 100 new season ticket holders that are now a part of the Jazz Nation as season ticket holders. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you. But moreover, it was fun. I gave the locker room tours, tried to interact the best I could. Every group but one was fabulous. One group just wouldn't laugh. I mean, I'm not that funny. I'm not a stand-up comedian, but I'd have these groups. I did, I think, 6 tours, and this one group just wouldn't laugh. And you know, you try to go to the old Brady Bunch thing where you try to find one person in the crowd who's gonna, and there was this woman, she had dark glasses on, sitting over the center. She wasn't gonna laugh at anything. You had no facial reaction from her. We're inside and she's wearing her dark glasses. And then I tried to find other people. There just wasn't. The kids were loud in that group, and oh gosh, they just wouldn't laugh. I was so like uncomfortable. I even said like, wow, you guys aren't laughing at anything. Like, and they didn't even laugh at that. But otherwise, it was great. That's just all my insecurities coming out there. That one, it was awful. It was like being a stand-up comedian. You hear those stories about bombing. I was fully bombing to this one group. It was dreadful, but it was great. I enjoyed it. You know, I don't get as much time just one-on-one to say hi to people as I'd probably like in that setting, just because there's so many people around. And but it was cool to see people with their kids and the next generation and multiple generations, and just remember the fabric of our community and how important the Jazz are. The other one is Jeremy Evans. The pictures that have come out of Junior Jazz last week. Jeremy's just the best. I mean, he's just a wonderful, super human being. You know, I don't know what his role is on our team and how he fits and this and that, and he probably played too much last year because he was such a wonderful human being for all we know. But he's just a truly awesome dude, and to be around him and see that is and to watch him do the Junior Jazz stuff is just a great reminder of what high quality people we have. All right, obviously the news story of the weekend is the Paul George injury. It's terrible. I have not seen it. I will not see it. I actually went and saw Boyhood that night and taped the event, so I was able to cut it off early. Boyhood's worth it. It's 3 hours, by the way. So I actually watched a lot because I did I'm trying to get ready for a Century ride, and I did a ride inside, so I had 3 hours watching stuff. The other one I watched I thought was really good, was a documentary called Spinning Plates. So just to pass on there. So in regards to the George injury, I mean, it's obviously terrible, and it's got huge ramifications on the Eastern Conference. I mean, there's just not a favorite in the East other than Chicago at this point. And how about Lance Stevenson leaving Indiana because he wants to be the man, and if he had stayed, he's the man. Now they also weren't going to give him a 3-year deal, and this would have given him an opportunity. It might be the best thing for Indiana they didn't keep Lance Stevenson, frankly, because if he's the man for a year and you try to integrate Paul George back in, it would have been very, very awkward. I think that actually may have turned out better for Indiana, as bad as the situation is. I'm not one who buys into the immediacy of the reaction. I guess it was so horrific, and I didn't see it, that some of this is based on that. But the idea that no one's ever going to play USA basketball again or FIFA basketball again, or FIBA, I think it's a little bit of a stretch. We already have the Thunder holding Steven Adams out and the Spurs holding Manu Ginobili out, so it happens. And we already, every single guy on that team other than Paul Millsap has 2 years left on his deal. So it's already taking place to some extent. This isn't a new awareness, but unless I'm missing it, we've been doing this since '92. This is the first significant injury. And the argument in certain years that players that played the Olympics were more prone to injuries the next year actually doesn't, I don't think it statistically backs up. So I would say that I find that a bit of a stretch. I find that a little bit too much in the way people are arguing that. But we'll see. For Hayward, frankly, I think this opens a door for him. If they were looking for they have all these duplicate players. They're all similar: Chandler Parsons, DeMar DeRozan, Gordon Hayward, Klay Thompson. If you look at them, and to some extent look at them and realize maybe one of them makes the team, when Durant and George were on the team, then you probably want someone who could play more 2-3 because those guys were going to play 3-4. With George off the team, you may want somebody who can play more 3-4, and then you keep Korver as just your dead-eye shooter. So that could open the door to Millsap. That could open the door. Now to me, it ends up being Parsons, Hayward, Millsap a little bit. Klay Thompson may just make the team. But Chandler Parsons, I don't see him with that same 4 ability. And Hayward at 230, I mean, he looked big. And even Mark Jones and Fran Fraschilla immediately commented on it. The first thing they said, he's gotten quite big. He's Rudy Gay size now. He's 6'8", 230. It's a big kid. And I thought he looked like Gordon Hayward. I thought he looked big, but I didn't think that something was suddenly different. He's not. He's very good athletically, but he's always been a little horizontal rather than vertical. There was a play where you would have liked to see him go up and pack it in traffic. He didn't do it, and dished it back out to the wing. Where I think you rather, if he's going to be, if he's going to be an elite superstar, he goes up and finishes that. His handle was creative, at times loose, at times creative. His passing was fabulous. His defensive anticipation in the passing lanes was as good as I've seen it. He looks strong. He looks like he's a good player. He's probably one of the top 20, 25 players in the NBA. And with the amount of guys that aren't there, that's a guy who might make that team, and his versatility might fit exactly what they're looking for. Tip of the hat to Dustin Call, who posted a nice thing on the Locked On Sports Google Plus community about being at the scrimmage. That's a really neat community you should become a part of if you're a Jazz fan. The Locked On Sports Google Plus community. Actually, if you're a Ute or a Cougar, too. The guys have done a really good job. We've got some moderators. I'll take some time and kind of try to recollect the moderators on that and see where we are and everything. The goal of that is to be a one-stop shop for you, both for discussion and any articles or any things that are written on the Jazz. The Utes or the Cougars, I use it just as a fabulous way to look at things. I'm not sure I can find the soundbite I'm looking for, but I thought it was really interesting the other day where in USA Basketball, it was the day the DeMarcus Cousins Mason Plumlee controversy started. And there was a quote from there was a quote from Coach Mike Krzyzewski in regards to the idea of what he's looking for from a player. And I don't think, I was trying to find it earlier, and it's hard for me to figure out where it is, but let me see if I can find it quickly, and if I can't, I'll pull it up. Now, they just have the quotes. But he went in and started talking about positionless basketball, which I thought was really interesting because it's something we've heard from Quinn. I don't know if this is something the two of them both believe or what it is. And he made, he talked about positionless basketball, and then he flipped it around and made the comment. Now, how they defend defensively certainly is going to matter. And I thought that was worth kind of pointing out, that he has this same concept we've heard from Quinn about positionless basketball, but at the same time, when he suddenly then was talking about but they've got to be able to guard. So we can be as positionless as we want, but you have to be able to guard each of those spots along the way. And when you're thinking about Dante Exum and Trey Burke, that actually really works. That allows you to have those two guys out there, and because Exum is 6'6", he can handle defending the shooting guard, and frankly, defending the shooting guard is probably not as difficult right now as defending a point guard in this league. So there's a real argument there of why that would work. And I thought it was interesting to hear from Coach K. I have some other things prepared, but I've got all week and there's not a lot of stuff. I was going to do this whole thing on how we score. I thought there's some really good stat work that's being done behind the scenes. I'm picking up some of it, going to share it with you. But I did want to point out Tony Parker, 3-year, $43 million deal. The other day I tweeted out without any inside information the idea of some point guards or some players that it just seems more and more like the veteran point guard's not going to exist. And so it seems to me that you could see the Jazz going for some sort of young guard who comes out of college and can, really light it up. And I listed just kind of 5 of the highest ranking point guards that are going to come out and just practice and battle and give the Jazz some element. Bryce Cotton, I mentioned from Providence. I think he might have signed a partial deal with San Antonio. I'd have to look at that. Deontay Burton out of Nevada, DeAndre Kane out of ISU, and Aaron Kraft out of Ohio State. Bring one of those guys in camp. If they play really, really well, maybe they make the roster. If not, you send them to Idaho. They're a part of your program, but they're really there to practice and bust their butt rather than the veteran point guard who's kind of guaranteed a roster spot, takes away some of your flexibility, and some of those things. I think that's. I think we're heading in that direction. Those are guys that I saw work out. All of them saw work out with the Jazz at some point in time and had different positives or negatives. Interesting stat work that has been done recently. It turns out that the later you get into the shot clock, the mid-range jumper becomes more efficient. So it depends a little bit. If you're getting open 3, obviously open 3 is always better than open 2, but late in the shot clock often you're getting an off-the-dribble 3 or an open mid-range shot. You bypass that off-the-dribble 3 and you can get a mid-range shot. And it's interesting that if you get down to about the final 8 seconds of the shot clock, it turns out that the off-the-dribble 3 becomes less efficient than the open mid-range shot. It's about equal between 13 and 8. So really, to some extent, if you're popping that 3, some of that stuff's got to really happen early. And the later you get in the shot clock, through some statistical work, the mid-range shot becomes more and more valuable, which I found a pretty interesting angle on things. There was another one. Actually, I'll save the other stuff because I got some good questions today, and I have to go to the sponsor golf tournament if we can get it in with this weather. I don't know, it did in Salt Lake. It dumped up here last night, something big. Enough so at 4:40 in the morning I woke up and turned off my sprinklers to make sure they didn't go off. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's go to the, hey, I did a talk show for 3 days now. Let's go to the questions. If Love really wants to play with LeBron, shouldn't the Cavs just wait a year and then pick him up in free agency? Right, but LeBron's a free agent in 2 years, so if LeBron's upset that you waited a year with him and diminished his chance to get a championship, I'm not sure you want an unhappy LeBron. I think he could really scorn you and damage your franchise forever. So yes, in theory they could wait, but that's also a risk. I think that I think there's still a chance. I'm not sure I totally trust Kevin Love on this deal. I think I'd get him in-house, get him to like it, get him to feel the winning, get him to realize. But I think if you got him in free agency, suddenly deciding between Golden State, his own team, the Lakers, and Cleveland, I think you could lose him. When it comes to the end of tanking, why isn't the league talking about penalizing draft picks? From Elliott Canada. So the latest report is, whether or not they might equalize the difference to try to slot them 1 through 40, do all these different things. Zach Lowe's written a lot about it. Because it's pretty hard to define what tanking is. Did we tank last year? Or do we just develop talent? There is a process in this where 50% of the teams are guaranteed to lose every night. It's not a, it's not a win-win. It's a zero-sum game. So, I actually think this is a non-issue, frankly. I mean, I think it's just one of the smallest issues that's on the docket of the NBA. I am so off kilter. I think the age issue and the tanking issue, which get the most attention, are two of the lesser issues bothering the game. Um, Maybe I'm wrong, but that I just don't see it as that big a deal. I think if they equalize a little bit and take away the incentive to, I criticize soccer though. I think soccer's problem to me is that a huge amount of the time the incentives are wrong inside the game, and I think that there's something to be said for that. I think that makes a little bit of sense. So you got to try to do that, but maybe if they make this latest change, it's good. It's good for us, frankly, because it allows us to keep pushing development and not trying to pull back at some point in time. Being an international fan from Australia, do you think the Jazz would ever have some sort of international membership? Doesn't appear popular in the U.S., but might be missing an opportunity, especially with Dante and Rudy being big parts of the team. I don't know what you mean by international membership, Philip. I think we'll take a foreign trip next year. I think our number is going to be up. I think we'll head to Australia and New Zealand. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jazz and the Thunder don't go to an Australia-New Zealand trip next year preseason. Peter Hayward, I've heard you talk about how well guys with the ball do coming off pick and roll. Are there any numbers that show how successful possession is when a certain player is setting the screen? If so, how are Favors, Cantor, Booker, and everyone else? That is a fabulous question. Yes, there was some work done on it by Peter Schumann that showed pick and roll combinations, and so you should be able to extrapolate out the picker. But I like that. That's a great question. I don't have it, but that's a great question. I'll reach out to John if he's got a moment and see if I can find anything on it. That's terrific. From Ginger, what do you think Trey is learning experience at USA camp that will help him be a better player next season? I mean, I think Trey is at the age and the situation that most players are at that age, in which their talk is one thing, and then having their action equal their talk, so that they actually, I think Trey knows what he wants to be, and he says all the right things. Now he's got to really figure out how to do it. I don't think he knows how to do it yet. Maybe this will show him how to do it, and give him exposure of how to do it. He's got to decide at some point, does he want to be great? Does he want to be average? Is he willing to put in the work? Is he willing to take the sacrifices? Most guys have to go through that at that point in time and figure out what it is exactly. I think that's the exposure. From what I understand, basketball-wise, it's not great. You're really just fodder for the other team to practice. Gordon Hayward found it very frustrating just because you never could prove yourself. Every time you made a good play, they'd stop and back the practice up to fix what was wrong for the national team. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure that that's a great basketball experience. I think it's more of an exposure experience, and did he learn what he wanted to? All right. Sorry for my English. I'm from Spain. Isn't it a little scary that the teams who've seen Exum and Hood in their workouts passing them in the draft? Oh, that's an interesting perspective. So here's what I've tried to figure out. On Exum, I just think it was a numbers. I just think Orlando decided they wanted Peyton at 10 and wanted Gordon at 4, and then the first 3 were Wiggins. So I don't think Exum dropped. And I think anybody who's seen Exum realizes why he went 5. Now we'll figure out if he ever puts it together. Rodney Hood, the word that I'm getting is that people saw him as a 2. And he's big, for whatever reason, 6'8", 6'9" 2s have not always been very successful. I also think there's always a guy in the draft who slips just because of the weird order of the draft and demand of the teams that are drafting. And I think that was Rodney Hood this year. And so now what I haven't done is the research on where a player's slotted compared to where he finishes. The other one, you also could argue that Rodney Hood didn't slip that much. You could argue that really Rodney Hood's agent had an overvalued point of view of where he was on the draft board. If you go look at Chad Ford's last draft board, I think he had him at 19. He went 23. That happens. So, but I think that's a good question, and I hadn't thought about it before. But from what we've seen out of both of them, we've been ecstatic. All right, I need to jump to get to this event. Thank you very much. Sorry, James, didn't get your other question. Thanks for tuning in today. I'll be back with you. I expect to be back with you tomorrow. Let me quickly tell you what our schedule is this week. A lot of it has to do with, as I mentioned, my riding schedule. I'm trying to, I'm back tomorrow. I don't ride tomorrow. My daughter's got a trying to get ready for a 100-miler, and not being ready for a 100-miler when you do a 100-miler sucks. So Wednesday, we're good. Thursday's questionable. Friday, we're probably good. So we actually might do a whole week worth of stuff this week. All right, thanks very much for tuning in. Have a good one.